This is the Rocket City Retirement Show with Cris Wallace. Cris loves educating people in person and over the airwaves. Whether it's retirement planning, investing, tax, or legacy, Cris prides himself in helping protect what matters to you. This is the Rocket City Retirement Show.
Hi, I'm Lou Ann Fulmer, and we welcome you to the Rocket City Retirement Show with my friend, certified financial planner, Cris Wallace. He's president at WG Financial Group, and we're going to have a great time today talking about retirement like we always do. And here's the phone number that I want to give you. If you have any questions, reach out to Cris. It's complimentary. 256-937-2010. Put that number in your phone. You can also text the word visit to get the same results as far as setting up a complimentary discovery session. Just text the word visit. You can correspond that way, 256-937-2010. Remember to check us out on Facebook. You can just search for WG Financial Group 256. And remember, the motto here at WG Financial Group is plan, retire, and play. And that's what we talk about on our show. We want that for you. Find us online anytime at WGFinancialGroup.com. Cris, hello to you.
Hello to you, Lou Ann.
So excited to get started here. We've got a lot to get to today. Now, I have to say, are we going to have some WG positivity from you since we don't have Graham on the air with us?
Oh, yeah. We've got some WG positivity.
Okay, cool. I can't wait to hear it. What do you have?
It's going to be short and sweet.
Short and sweet. Okay, that's fine.
I have the show all to myself today.
You have the show all, I know. Now, this is unusual, isn't it? We haven't done this for a while.
No Graham, no Richard.
It's been months, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even get to introduce them today.
So, yeah. We have some bad weather in the area. Thunderstorms and threats of tornadoes and all that.
Oh.
Yeah. So somebody pulled up the radar, said it looked pretty rough. And I was kind of listening to him on our Teams call. And I said, listen, it sounds like you don't want to come in and do radio. You know, if you don't feel comfortable coming in, I got it. I can do it. You know, I can handle it. And of course, that's why he's not here. So, these young kids these days, man. Wow. Wow.
We're going to have, you know what's happening next time. We're going to be teasing him so badly.
Oh yeah. He'll listen. I'll just hush now so he won't get mad at me or anything like that. But, so yeah, it's just us. So, no, that is the positivity. That is just me.
That's the positivity.
That's
Cris
it.
shows up. Okay. Gotcha.
Cris is here.
Yeah.
Rain, sleet, or snow.
You're like the mailman.
Yeah. It doesn't matter. I'm going to show up every day. So, all right, let's talk about, just interest rates in general.
Ooh,
So I think the market's starting to believe the Feds that they're not ready to drop rates. And if we are looking at all the available data, you know, I do believe the market is now starting to say, you know what, maybe they are serious. Maybe they aren't going to lower rates as fast as we thought they were. So if you think back to the end of 2023, during the Fed meeting, Powell kind of alluded to rate cuts this year. And they said, you know, several rate cuts, you know, like I think it was around 6 or so that they had talked about cutting, and the market just went berserk. It was like, oh, yeah, you know, liquidity's back. Rate cuts are coming. Bond markets took off. Stock markets took off. And here lately, the talk has been like, not yet, not yet. Maybe later, but not now. Tomorrow. There's a clip on the internet. Tomorrow. It's always there's some little kid. I don't know if you've seen that or not, but I guess it's a kid, you know, that always his parents always tell him tomorrow. And he's like, tomorrow. So anyway, that's kind of like what the market is now starting to believe it's going to be tomorrow. And if you look at the Fed fund futures, they're already, May is like a 95% chance that they just leave rates where they are.
Okay.
You get out into June, July, and remember, the further out you go, the less accurate those futures become.
Sure.
So we're close enough now to May. Rates are not dropping in May. There's like a 50-something% chance in June that there may be a cut, but I'll be watching that over the next few weeks to see if those start pushing out, because that's what we're seeing now. We've seen the rate cuts, the expected rate cuts, just continue to get pushed further and further, further and further out. So what does all of this mean? Well, we've seen the 10-year Treasury from the first of the year go from 3.88 all the way up to today when we're recording is sitting at about 4.36.
Okay.
So that's a 48 basis point increase since January 1. That's about almost 12.5% increase. in the 10-year Treasury yield. So we've seen it go up. So if you remember, if you've been following the show for quite a while, or if you just know about, bonds and how bonds and interest rates work opposite of each other, what that's caused bond values to fall. So if you look at the aggregate bond index, so again, that's a widely tracked bond index that, you probably have that fund in your 401k. It'll be something like BND or AGG. If you're in the TSP, it will be your F fund. And really, since the first of the year, that particular bond index is actually down around 3%. So we've seen the 10-year yield rise about 4%, almost 12.5%, and we've seen bond values fall again. So here we go again with rising yields and falling bonds. Mm-hmm. And this is becoming a problem for today's retiree, because you have a lot of retirees out there today who are very conservative, and they would prefer to have more of their money in bond-like instruments. And that's caused a problem here over the last 3 years, and the problem just continues to happen. And if you look at the last 3 years of just the aggregate bond index, it's down around 8% over the last 3 years. So it's been a problem now for 3 years. So I'm just sitting here wondering, at what point do we kind of give up on bonds? Not quite entirely, but should we be looking at other alternatives? And I think those other alternatives exist. And I think that when you're out there talking to your advisor, ask him or her, are there any other opportunities, any other things that we can look at that may get us, to another level where we're not so interest rate sensitive. So anyway, right. I think that's a conversation. So
interesting.
Bonds have just been a problem here lately, and they continue to be. So, and again, I think the markets in general are now starting to kind of believe the Feds. All right. So again, taking us back to the end of last year when I said the markets went berserk, everything was like, oh yeah, gangbusters, Feds are dropping rates, yahoo, party's over or party's on, let's go. And now all of a sudden we don't think that it's going to happen. And I think now, they've been saying higher for longer. A lot of people have. And I think that's what's going to happen. You got good GDP numbers. You've got a low unemployment at this point. And then inflation appears to be sticky. So if you look at the last couple of rounds of data that's come out, you've got a stickiness with it. And I think a lot of that has to do with just rents have not come down as quick as they have wanted them to get to that target. So, at some point I'm just sitting here, as we're talking through this, and I'm remembering one of the words that my wife used to say, and then it was one of those words she used a lot. And it wasn't making fun of me, by the way, for those of you out there waiting for the joke.
Oh, I was waiting for that.
It wasn't making fun of me. But, when the kids were young and they would start crying, they're kind of babies or whatever, right. She would say that they're overtired. And that became, mm-hmm. And if she listens to this episode, she's gonna put me in a stranglehold, by the way.
You're kidding.
Yeah, so she would say overtired. And it got to where I would everything I would say, oh, they're just overtired. Then it would be a joke at that point. That was my joke. Everything's overtired. So at this point, I just wonder, when does the market start to act like my kids, like at a year and a half old, when they just were just fed up and they were just overtired. Yeah. And, just think about how many times you've been in the grocery store where you've seen the kid pitching the fit.
Meltdown, yeah.
Yeah, the meltdown. At what point does the market just say, well, he, as in Jerome Powell, keeps telling us tomorrow, and tomorrow never comes. So it's like, I'm going to lay back in that grocery cart and I'm just going to throw my head back and I'm going to scream and pitch a fit and have a meltdown. And so that's kind of what I'm wondering now, is like, when does that happen?
Yeah.
Because I think the market, I think a lot of people think the market is overpriced. And, I guess I could agree to that, I guess I could agree with that to some degree. But at the same time, I think it's because the market is continuing to expect rate cuts, and all eyes have been on Jerome Powell. And that's what I tell people that come in the office. It's like, the market's not paying attention to Trump or Biden, and market's looking at Jerome Powell and it's kind of waiting for that cut. So I don't know. We'll have to wait and see.
So then that means it might be a good time because when interest rates are up, bonds are down, and then vice versa. So maybe the market's getting tired or the bonds are getting tired and they're going to start going back up in value, then how do you make those changes with your people? Because I know you're not supposed to, time the market and things like that.
Oh, yeah. No, it's terrible to try to time the market for sure. What you have to do is you have to be very diverse in your investments. And I've had a lot of people, because rates are really good right now, I've had a lot of people choosing to add in different types of instruments. And I've talked about this before on the show, but there are certain types of annuities out there. And I said the A word and everybody's going to get upset. But there are certain types of annuities out there that make sense for people right now, especially that conservative investor. And I also think they make sense in a way when it comes to, just using that kind of like as part of what would have been some of your bond money. So let's say you're 50-50 and, maybe I don't want to put 50% into bonds. Maybe I want to put some into an annuity. And the value of that can be seen here is, number one, the type of annuity that I'm referring to has a zero floor. That just means that you don't lose if the market goes down. So it kind of protects some of your money on the downside.
Yeah, I like that.
The annuity that I'm referring to doesn't have a fee. There's no fee with it. It pays a commission to the agent. So that needs to be known and said, and it also gets documented. So it is a commission product, but it has no fee. It has no downside, but it has limited upside, right? No vehicle out there, that I'm aware of is going to protect you from the downside and give you all of the market upside. That's a unicorn, and those don't really exist. But when we're looking at this type of annuity in place of some of the bond money, I think it makes sense, because when you think about bonds in general, I think most people would say, if my bonds did 3 or 4%, I'd be okay with that, because that's kind of supposed to be your safer money. Well, these annuities, I feel like, have the potential to do 3, 4, maybe 5% on average without exposing you to the downside, which is what bonds are doing. Like right now, as the 10-year yield is going up, we're seeing bonds go down. So I don't know. Like I said, I think it's worth a conversation. That's the kind of, strategies that we're talking about with some of our clients to try to alleviate putting, all of their money in bonds, but also trying to really just better their risk versus reward. Because at the end of the day, we're trying to seek the highest level of return for the least amount of risk. And if we can take some of that, say that bond money, and kind of allocate it to a product that doesn't have the risk associated with it, then does that make sense for some people? And some people it does, some people it doesn't. And there's a lot of other things you have to discuss with clients about those types of products. But at the end of the day, the whole message here is we have to look in other places at this point, especially when it comes to the fixed income side of the portfolio, and try to reduce some of that correlation that we've seen. We've seen a lot of correlation with both stocks and bonds here as of late. So anyway, I've rambled long enough on that. I actually have another story I want to tell, but maybe I'll save it for a little bit later in the show.
Sure.
So again, thanks for listening. Give us a call, 256-937-2010. Our number again is 256-937-2010.
And Cris Wallace and myself.
Do you have a retirement plan but would like a second opinion? Let Cris lift you off into retirement by calling 256-937-2010. WG Financial Group. That's 256-937-2010.
Quarters, just 25 cents. That's hardly anything, right? But Cris Wallace and his team at WG Financial see quarters a little differently. A quarter is a lot when it's a quarter of your retirement savings. Now, do you want to pay 25% or more in taxes during your retirement? Well, Cris can create a plan to help address that. Now, if the only time you think about taxes is when you file them, you don't have a tax strategy. But it's not too late to get one with the help from Cris Wallace. So act now to make sure you're not paying a quarter, dime, or even a penny more than you should. Call Cris Wallace and his team at WG Financial at 256-937-2010 to schedule your personalized tax strategy session. A quarter saved is a quarter earned. Call 256-937-2010 now. That's 256-937-2010. Investment advisory services made available through AE Wealth Management, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Firm may not give tax advice.
Want to feel confident about your financial future? Let Cris Wallace from WG Financial guide you through it. Take the first step today. WG Financial Group is here to help you plan, retire, play. Just go to WGFinancialGroup.com. That's WGFinancialGroup.com.
Hi, we are so glad you joined us today. I'm Lou Ann Fulmer here with Cris Wallace. And Cris, one thing that we have to make sure of when we're in retirement is, and we've made that transition into retirement, is the fact that now our retirement assets have to kind of create a regular paycheck for us, right? So that's really scary, I would think, to a lot of your clients that are heading into retirement for the first time.
It is. And what we're going to do today is we're just going to take this a little bit different direction, maybe. And so we're going to talk about obviously things in retirement, but I want to address some of the different types of vehicles that we can put our money into as we are working our way up to retirement. So if that's okay. And then,
well, yeah,
I'll just kind of talk. And if you want to chime in and ask some questions that you think the listener might be thinking, or you might be thinking yourself, just do it.
Okay.
So just like Nike, we'll just do it. So
just do it.
yeah. So right off the bat, I know we've talked about this one quite a bit on the air before, but I think it's worth mentioning again. And I want to hammer this drum home like I do, Social Security and waiting on claiming and taxation and all that. And it's the HSA plan. So, and of course, if you have an HSA and or you want to contribute to an HSA, you must also have a high deductible health plan in place that will allow you to make contributions to that HSA. So again, if you've never heard of these or you've heard me talk about it before, just listen up again, because I always like to say when I was growing up, my parents or my grandparents would always tell me something. I wouldn't really listen. I had to hear it multiple times.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah. And I would still think like they don't know what they're talking about. And then when I got to 30 years old, I was like, oh, well, maybe they didn't know what they were talking about.
Exactly.
So HSAs. All right. So let's talk about the real big benefits of that. So number one, the contributions go in, pre-taxed. And so basically what it's doing is it's lowering your gross income. So that's a good thing because it's lowering your tax obligation. So I always like to just remind people, like, that's a quick way. If you're making a lot of money today, that's a really quick way to drive down your gross income. If you drive down your gross income, then what's ultimately going to happen is that you're also going to lower your taxable income, because if you have, if your gross income is lower and you go through your standard deduction or your itemization, then your taxable income will, pretty much be lower as well. So that's the first thing. While it's in the HSA, and a lot of people don't really know this, but you can actually invest. You can actually invest what's in your HSA.
Wow.
So what, some of my clients do that are very, knowledgeable, and they listen to me and they've listened to the show. These are the people that email me and say, hey, great show. I heard you talk about this. This is exactly what I'm doing. When it comes to just what I would do is I would keep enough to cover your deductible for that first year. And then the excess I would invest, if that makes sense. So let's say you have 2 years worth of contributions in there. So what I would end up doing is I would invest some of that, but I would also make sure I have enough to cover my deductible. Because remember, when it comes to the health plan, it's a high deductible health plan. So you're going to have, potentially some expenses that year for medical, and you're going to come out of pocket for most of that. And in order to cover that, that's where you use the HSA to cover. So that's why I'm saying keep some of that money liquid before you invest it in case you have a big emergency come up where you need to put money towards that. Now, some of my clients won't even do that. They won't cover it from the HSA. They'll just cover it from their pocket. So the reason they're using the HSA is to lower their gross income to help save on taxes. And they're also creating another bucket for later on down the road in retirement. So we know the money goes in tax deferred, pre-tax, right? Lowers our gross income. We know that while it's in there, it's growing tax free, and we can also invest it. And we can, in some cases, we have the potential to make it grow faster. Okay. Now, on the backside, when we go to pull it out for qualified medical expenses, is tax free. So we've got like this triple tax tornado thing going on inside an HSA. It's going in pre-tax, growing tax free, and coming out tax free. I mean, that's a pretty good deal if you think about it.
Yeah.
Now, some of my clients prefer not to do this. Totally fine. You don't have to. But I'll tell you why. It's a mental block is what happens. What happens is it's different because you're used to the standard traditional healthcare where you go to the doctor, you pay a copay, you have that low deductible of $500 to $1,000. And the words high deductible scares a lot of people. That's why a lot of people won't do the HSA. They will not do the HSA because of the words high deductible in that health plan. Okay. So
Interesting. Yeah.
it is. And it's one of those mental things you really have to get over. So for me, I have personally had those, Christian health share plans before.
Right.
Unless you have a shareable event, you're paying out of pocket every time you go.
Right.
So that phase of my life, I was like, I don't really like this. Now, Grandma's mentioned on here before, his parents have that and they love it. So it's just about what you're used to. So I was not used to that. And then I went back to the traditional healthcare. But when I uncovered the HSA and the high deductible health plan, and I figured out, okay, I'm reducing my gross income and I'm essentially creating another bucket for myself later on down the road in retirement. This is great. Why haven't I been doing this for 20 years?
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
So anyway, so that's kind of how an HSA works. There's the benefits of it. It does take some getting used to, but I think the benefits, in my opinion, far outweigh, whatever negatives you can come up with. Now, the other kind of cool thing with an HSA is at age 65, after you turn 65, you actually can withdraw it for anything at that point. But But if it's not qualified medical expenses, you'll pay the taxes. So it sort of kind of, in a way, acts like an IRA after 65 because you can use the money for anything. Okay, so just know that at 65, if you had a lot of money in there, you could pull some out and I'm just going to make this up, but go buy a car, if you had enough money to do that. But you're going to pay taxes on the withdrawal.
If that's what it's for. Okay.
Correct. But if you pulled it out for, like qualified medical expenses, like going to the doctor, hearing aids, something like that, glasses, dental, whatever, then that would fall under the qualified medical expenses and that would be tax-free. So that's kind of the unique thing about HSAs. Now, if you die with this vehicle, it's probably the worst retirement vehicle to die with, because your beneficiary is going to owe the tax in the tax year. So it's like if this passed on to your kids, they're going to owe the tax. You don't get to stretch this thing out like you do an IRA for 10 years. You're going to owe the taxes in the year of death. So, let's just say somebody, accumulates $75,000 or whatever in an HSA and they die with that in the HSA. Well, you're going to owe the taxes on that HSA because taxes have never been paid on it. It's kind of a really bad vehicle to die with. So my advice to the retiree is if you have one of these, use it for medical, use it for long-term care, because that's the other thing that you can also use it to pay long-term care premiums. Okay. So there's a lot of really good uses for an HSA. So that's probably enough on HSA. Wow. Did you have any questions on that, Lou Ann, as I'm kind of walking through this?
Well, what I want to know is, you said it's the worst. It would be worst if it's the worst vehicle to die with. How do you try to get rid of it before you get elderly, or because if you're using it for long-term care premiums, you want to have it. I guess that's my question.
Yeah, so that's exactly right. So kind of what I was mentioning a few minutes ago that is what I tell my clients is, once you've accumulated money, you get to retirement, you want to use that money. That needs to be
the money.
Yes. That doesn't need to be something that, I'm going to save this like a Roth IRA. I'm going to save this until I'm 75. No. Go ahead, start paying long-term care premiums. Start using it for medical. A lot of my clients don't carry dental. Dental insurance is kind of not great. I have dental insurance. That's not great. So, you could use it for dental.
Use this for dental.
Yeah. I mean,
that's good.
You can look this up online and go under and find out what qualified medical expenses are. It's a very long, liberal list of things that you can use the HSA for. So again, I think it's worth taking a look at. Now, most companies do their open season in the fall. Federal government does it in the fall, and most companies do. There are some that do it around the middle of the summer, June, July timeframe. So if that's the case, then take a look at it at that point. But the key thing is you're going to want to make sure that you have that high deductible health plan kind of paired with it. So, all right.
Good. Thank you.
So enough on HSAs. I want to kind of just move briefly into Roth IRAs for a second. So we've got a lot of people know what Roth IRAs are. I think a lot of people now look back and wish that they had, started contributing to a Roth IRA when they first came out. I've heard that quite often from people. They were like, hey, I wish that I knew about a Roth IRA, or trusted more in the Roth IRA back in I think it came out sometime in the 90s.
Right.
But they didn't. But I'm also kind of telling you too that that's what you're doing with the HSA right now. You're not trusting it.
Oh.
and so you should be looking at it much harder today, maybe because you glossed over the Roth, years ago. And now everybody's like, hey, I want to do Roth because it's tax-free in the future and tax rates are going up, et cetera. So let's talk about Roth IRAs. Okay. So first of all, you can also invest in like Roth 401k, but let's stick with the outside Roth. So first of all, there is an income like threshold. So in other words, if you make too much money, you cannot contribute to a Roth IRA. Most families that I work with, by the time they get finished doing some pre-tax 401k and maybe an HSA, their modified adjusted gross income is low enough to be able to make a Roth IRA contribution. So that limit for a single individual is if you make under $146,000 a year, you can make a full Roth IRA contribution, which if you're under the age of 50 today, it's $7,000. In the year that you turn 50, not when you turn 50, but in the year that you turn 50, you can do $8,000. So there's $1,000 of catch up there. So if you're single, if you make underneath $146,000 a year, you can do that full contribution. Somewhere between 146 and 161, there's something called a phase out. So you can't make the full contribution, but you can make a partial. Like for example, if you make $149,000 a year, you can only put in $5,600. So there's a phase out all the way to 161. If you're a married couple, married filing jointly, MFJ as we like to call it, if you're underneath $230,000, you can make that full contribution for each person. So the wife could do, if you're below 57, husband could do 7. If you're 50 or older, you can do 8, and you can do each of you. Now, this is where I see a big mistake many, many times when people come in the office. So a lot of the clients that come sit down with us, or prospects that come sit down with us, have saved their money. They've done exactly what they're supposed to do to prepare for retirement, but they're missing certain things. They're just doing things. They're doing a lot of things right, but then they're doing some things inefficiently. So one of the big areas that I see right before we get off to a break here is they will have a large balance in their savings account, sometimes 6 figures, so a large balance, and they will have a low enough modified adjusted gross income, married filing jointly under 230, to where they can make a full Roth IRA contribution for each person. Okay. Yet they didn't do it. But they've sat on the money in savings. And the common response that I get is, well, Chris, I want to have this money in my savings. I'm like, okay, but you're, at today's interest rates, let's just say, 4% on $100,000. That's for, $4,000 of ordinary income that you're getting paid from the bank that you've got to report on your tax return, that you turn around and paying taxes on that. If you would have taken $8,000 per person and move 16 of that into 2 different Roths, one for the husband, one for the wife, you're removing that $16,000 from ordinary income, and then the future growth on that money becomes tax-free. Well, Chris, I don't want to invest it. That's fine. Put it in a money market mutual fund. It's better to sit on that side of the fence than to sit into the savings account. So these are the types of things, Luann, like when people come into the office, some of this stuff for us is very common sense, but to the person sitting across the table, it's not, because they don't do it like we do on a regular basis. So our job is to sit down with the family and say, okay, how can we help in all areas, of your retirement? How do we look at all the nooks and crannies of your retirement situation and try to help you be as efficient as possible? That's what we do. 256-937-2010. Again, the number's 256-937-2010.
Cris Wallace will be right back. This is the Rocket City Retirement Show.
Looking to feel confident about your financial future? Let Cris Wallace from WG Financial be your guide. Begin your journey today at WGFinancialGroup.com.
Wait. Now, wait a little longer. Great. You may have just increased your lifetime income by tens of thousands of dollars. That's how Social Security can work for you. The longer you wait, the more money you may get. Deciding when to start taking your Social Security benefits is one of the most important retirement decisions you'll make. Cris Wallace and the team at WG Financial Group can show you the options and help make the right decision for you and your situation. Call them today, 256-937-2010. You spent decades paying in. Optimize what comes out.
Cris Wallace and the WG Financial Group team can help you squeeze every penny out of your Social Security benefits. Don't wait any longer. Call now, 256-937-2010. That's 256-937-2010. Investment advisory services made available through AE Wealth Management, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Firm is not affiliated with the U.S. government.
Navigating uncertain times in the volatile market? Don't make impulsive decisions. Trust the Rocket City retirement guy, Cris Wallace. WG Financial Group is here to help you plan, retire, play. Call now at 256-937-2010. That's 256-937-2010 to schedule your meeting today.
Hello, I'm Lou Ann Fulmer, talking with the president of WG Financial Group, Cris Wallace. So happy to have you along with us today. We're just talking about various different, vehicles and things that we can use our money for and towards in retirement. Great stuff. Talked about the HSA plan. That was so interesting. And then we got into Roth IRAs. What do you have for us now, Chris?
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about a traditional IRA. So a lot of people know what the traditional IRA is. And one of the things that I think you have to, know is, rule of thumb. Let's first go back to rule of thumb. Okay. So let's dip back to the Roth for a quick second. If you're like younger and you're in a lower income bracket, we believe that you should be doing mostly or all Roth at that point. If you're in a low tax bracket, right? Because as you age up, let's say you get into your like 40s or 50s, and now you're in your peak earning years, and maybe you're making 150 a year. Then you might want to start looking at ways to defer a little bit of money, potentially. Some people say, no, I really do all Roth all the time. But at the end of the day, a good rule of thumb is, especially when you're starting out, get that first salary, low tax bracket, should be looking at Roth IRAs, Roth 401ks, and trying to sock away as much tax-free money for the future as possible. Now, the IRA, if you have an employer-sponsored plan, meaning like a 401k. So let's just say that, Johnny is working, at a defense contractor somewhere, and he has a 401k, and Johnny's putting money into that 401k, then Johnny will not be eligible to do a traditional IRA, deductible traditional IRA contribution, because Johnny makes, so much money and he has access and is an active contributor to an employer-sponsored plan. So what that does is that really, nixes him from being able to put into a traditional IRA. So when could a traditional IRA, be useful? Well, let's just say that a husband and wife are doing their taxes, and the husband is working, and they're together, their modified adjusted gross income is, let's just say, below $230,000, and they want to lower their taxable obligation. Well, because they will have, now remember that the key number here is 230. So this modified adjusted gross income is important. All right. So for the wife, so they could put in a deductible traditional IRA contribution because she's not working. He's working. She's not. He's contributing to a plan. So because of that, they could put in, let's just say an $8,000 traditional IRA contribution. Let's just say they're in the 24% bracket. And if they did that, that would actually reduce their taxes by about $1,920 on the federal side. So that's how you could use a traditional IRA, in some cases. Now, on the husband side, as we just mentioned in the last segment, remember I talked about that modified adjusted gross limit income limit of about $230,000, right? So in this case, I kind of said, hey, for the wife, we're going to put in $7,000, and we're going to do that because we want to reduce our tax obligation. And then for the husband, remember I said if you're an active participant in an employer-sponsored plan, you can't make that traditional IRA contribution. But, Luann, I'm going to test you here. Remember, if the income is low enough, he could he do, if he's below 230, could he do a Roth?
Yes, he could.
He could, absolutely.
Yeah.
You are listening. That's great.
I'm paying attention.
Paying attention.
I
You
always
get
pay attention.
Yeah, you get an A+ there. So
Thank
so
you.
in that case, we might say, hey, let's take a look at putting a little bit in the wife's traditional IRA to reduce our tax obligation by about $1,920 on the federal side because we're in the 24 bracket. But I'm still low enough on the husband side, income-wise. I can't do my traditional because I'm an active participant, but I can do my Roth IRA. So there's different, types and ways to reduce your taxes. And I think sometimes when you're thinking about this, I do think it's good to work with somebody. And this is part of that value that we talk about. Like, I think a lot of times people, they'll ask us like, what do you charge? And I'm like, well, here's what we charge. What are you paying? I don't know. I have no idea. Does your advisor talk about all this stuff? No, they don't. They're just kind of managing. They're kind of a broker. They just kind of manage your assets. And, when you come into our office, these are the types of conversations that we have.
Yes.
We're looking at these things. Okay, how can we do this a little bit better? Can we get a little bit more efficient over here? So anyway, I'll move on to so let's move on to the 401k.
Okay.
All right. So this is what, obviously this is an employer sponsored plan. So 401k, think of it like the TSP if you're a government worker. Today, 2024, you can put in 23,000. That's the max that you can put in. Now, in the year that you turn 50, so for me, that was last year. I turned 50 last year. I'll turn 51 this year. So last year, even before I was, 50, I knew that I was going to be 50 by the end of the year. So I was able to put in ketchup last year, not the condiment, but more money, right?
Yes.
So I was able to max out my 401k last year. So you can put in this year, you can put in 23,000, and then your catch-up contribution is 7,500, which would take your total amount that you can put into the plan, for, let's say, deferral reasons, say 30,500. Now, the max that you and the employer can put in is $69,000. That's the maximum that you and the employer can put in. And if you're over the age of 50, it's an additional 7,500. So it ends up being like 76,500 is what can go in total. Now that sounds confusing. People are like, no, I'm maxing out my 401k. Nope. Actually, your 401k, you can actually put in more in some plans. And that's something that we go over in the office and really help a client uncover. This is one of our things that we do with our families, is kind of say, okay, we have this opportunity. Let's take a look at it. Let's make some phone calls and kind of figure out what we can do. 401ks are fantastic. They're fantastic. And I don't want to give a testimonial here, but this is kind of the feedback that I receive. This is some of the feedback I've received from quite a number of people throughout my career. It's been, thank you for telling me to put more into my 401k.
Ah, wow. That's good.
I didn't get paid for that.
Mm-hmm.
That's in their 401k plan. But what I did was encourage them to invest in themselves.
That's so true.
You've heard the saying, pay yourself first, right?
Yep. Uh-huh.
I'm a big believer in that.
Yeah.
You have to do that off, first of all, you need to put your giving in off the top. Secondly, you want to turn around and you want to pay yourself and make sure that you're hitting your savings targets for the year. That way, cumulative, you can get to where you're trying to get to, which is called retirement. So that 401k is a great engine. Now, here's something that I hear a lot. Chris, I'm maxing my 401k out. I'm like, okay, well, cool. All right. How much are you putting in? Yeah, like $1,500. I'm like, woo, you're not maxing the thing out. And so what I hear a lot is that I'm maxing it, but what they mean is they're maxing the match. So let's take, for example, the government TSP. If you're a FERS employee, they match 5%. So maybe I have a FERS employee come in and they say, yeah, I'm maxing out my 401k. And what they really mean is they're maxing the match out. So I always ask, how much are you putting in? And if they say I'm maxing, I say, okay, great. What dollar amount are you putting in? So if you made $100,000, putting in 5%, you're only putting in $5,000. If you're over the age of 50, or the year that you turn 50, you got up to $30,500 of pre-tax money, or Roth money that could go in there, because now the TSP also has the Roth option inside of the TSP. So a big encouragement that if you're out there today listening to the show, use that 401k. Because the limit is so much higher. So you can put so much more money into that 401k than you can just a Roth or a traditional. Not that you shouldn't use those at the right times, but take advantage of that. So I'll make an example with the 401k. So, in the previous segment, we talked about Roth IRAs, right? And we said, okay, if we're of the age, let's just assume we're 50 or older, because that's pretty much our, most of our client base. We know that if you're 50 or older, you can put in $8,000 in a Roth IRA. Well, if you have a 401k that has a Roth option inside of it, you can put in $30,500. I mean, that's almost 4x what you can put in a traditional, just regular Roth IRA.
Wow.
So that's why I say, it's really important that, you really utilize that big basket, that 401k basket, because you can put a lot of money in there and it accumulates, it grows, it's out of sight, it's harder to get to. I mean, just lots and lots of reasons why people should be using those 401ks. All right, so let's talk about maybe like order of operations here. So I had made a joke before, and Jen heard this, and I've told this story before, but let me say it so I don't mess it up. It's please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Okay. So the order of parentheses, exponents, all that. So what I said was P. Demas on the air. Okay. And so Jen happened to be, luckily for me, listening to that episode, and she's like, "It's PEMDAS, you moron!" And the show's recorded, and this is like a Saturday, and this is going on, and they're just blasting over the airwaves. And I said P. Demas, and Jen said, "It's PEMDAS, you moron." So that's order of operations. How to solve an equation. So when it comes to, let's say you've got a question. Let's say you're low enough in income where you can make a Roth IRA contribution. And you also have a Roth option in the 401k. So then the question becomes, well, what should I do? How should I do this? So I'm going to tell you from a technical standpoint, maybe the order of operations and how it should be. If you have a Roth IRA, first of all, if you have the 401k and they match, let's say they're matching 5%, take the match. Take the free money. Like if you're out there today and you're not contributing enough to take the match, we need to have a conversation. And so that would be operation number one, step one, take advantage of the match. And you can do that in Roth. And as of right now, the matching goes in as pre-tax. Now that's subject to change here in the next year or two. So we'll just kind of leave that on the table for later. But step one, take advantage of the match. Once you've taken advantage of the match, technically, I think you should come out and fill up your Roth IRA. Now, why do I say that? The reason I like to do that is in an emergency, you can always go get your Roth IRA contributions back out without penalty. It's the growth on those contributions that falls under that 5-year 59.5 rule. So step 2 would be fill up the outside Roth. Okay. Step 3 would be, if I've got leftover money, then go back into the Roth 401k. So essentially, if you're low enough in income, below 230 as a married couple, you could literally put in $30,500 of Roth 401k money, and you could also literally put in, $8,000 of Roth IRA money, which would make your total retirement plan Roth contributions about $38,500. So that's a lot of money. So thinking about these steps, it really just depends on where you're at in your financial journey. Again, I like, you got to go into it with a mindset. If you do a Roth IRA contribution, knowing you can get your contributions back out, but you got to go in with it with the mindset that you're going to leave it there for retirement. But in an emergency, so you don't have to take a loan against a 401k, but in an emergency, you could go get some Roth contributions back out without penalty, and you might need that for college for kid or something, or you might need it for a wedding or something like that. So anyway, just a rule to keep in mind, and just kind of my order of operation. Take advantage of the match, fill up your Roth IRA, then come back to your 401k. And if you're doing Roth there, that's fine as well. So we'll be back in a second for the last segment. I do have another Social Security story I want to tell, so we'll go over that here in just a minute. 256-937-2010. That is the number. Give us a call, 256-937-2010.
And the Rocket City Retirement Show will continue right after this with Cris Wallace. Stick around for the rest of our show.
Do you have a retirement plan but would like a second opinion? Let Cris lift you off into retirement by calling 256-937-2010. WG Financial Group. That's 256-937-2010.
Quarters, just 25 cents. That's hardly anything, right? But Cris Wallace and his team at WG Financial see quarters a little differently. A quarter is a lot when it's a quarter of your retirement savings. Now, do you want to pay 25% or more in taxes during your retirement? Well, Cris can create a plan to help address that. Now, if the only time you think about taxes is when you file them, you don't have a tax strategy. But it's not too late to get one with the help from Cris Wallace. So act now to make sure you're not paying a quarter, dime, or even a penny more than you should. Call Cris Wallace and his team at WG Financial at 256-937-2010 to schedule your personalized tax strategy session. A quarter saved is a quarter earned. Call 256-937-2010 now. That's 256-937-2010. Investment advisory services made available through AE Wealth Management, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Firm may not give tax advice.
Experience comprehensive investment and wealth management at WG Financial Group. Our tailored services cater to pre-retirees and retirees. With a range of portfolio managers, we cater to your specific needs from passive to active strategies. WG Financial Group is here to help you plan, retire, and play. Reach out to us at 256-937-2010 to schedule your meeting today.
Hi, we're so glad to have you with us today. I'm Lou Ann Fulmer here with the Cris Wallace of WG Financial Group. Cris, you told me off air you have a story you want to tell us. It has to do with Social Security.
Yeah, it does. So this is, so this happened this week actually, and I was thinking, you know what, this will be an excellent radio story. So here's what happened. So we had somebody coming to see us, female, and when I talked to her, super friendly when she came in. I mean, just super friendly, and I was just, feverishly writing notes, taking notes like crazy. Right. And so we're talking, and she said, I heard you on the radio a while ago, and I said, well, how long? I don't know. It's just been a long time. And she said, I was never able to find you again. And so she said, I started, trying to find you. I couldn't find you. And then I asked somebody at work, and she's like, oh, you must be talking about Cris Wallace. And she's like, that was him. And then she said, you Googled me, found the website, read my bio and all that stuff. And then ended up catching another episode or something like that. So she ended up coming in. That's how she found us. And I thought that was kind of a cool story. Yeah, and what's really kind of funny and cool is we have listeners out there that listen to the show like they're listening right now, that they're not clients. They are listeners for educational reasons. Yeah. Timing's not right, whatever. But at the end of the day, we usually will get several referrals from radio listeners who are not clients.
Really? That's very good.
No,
Wow.
It's very cool. So anyway, so this lady comes in and we're talking, and she's just giving me all kinds of information. And the basic information she was giving me is like, okay, I'm this age and I'm going to work a few more years, and I'm single. Was married once, and then I got married again, and my ex-husband, my first ex-husband, he ended up passing away, and this is what I'm spending, and this is my occupation, and I'm, like I said, I'm writing all these notes, and finally I just look at her and I said, have you looked into claiming your first ex-husband's Social Security widow's benefit? He passed away, right? She said, yeah, he passed away at age 60. I said, hey, have you looked into that? She looked at me and she said, I can't claim his benefit. I said, yes, you can. She said, but I was married again. I said, I know, but you're divorced. And I said, your first husband passed away. And I said, so you're eligible to claim the widow's benefit from him.
Oh.
She had no idea. She had no idea.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so what's really crazy is, like 3 weeks ago, we just did this whole first couple of segments on Social Security. I don't know if you remember, we talked about divorced spouse and deceased spouse and the options that you have. So, and in this situation, she has that option. So she did not even know what the benefit amount was. So I told her how to get that, what she needed to have, available to give the Social Security to help her be able to obtain that amount, so we can work on a claiming strategy, because essentially she'll have the option of claiming her benefit or his benefit, depending on which one's higher, and she could defer one and claim one. I mean, I'm not going to get into the strategies on the air, because that's kind of like what I do in the office. And I know there's other advisors that listen, and I don't really want to teach them. So we'll just kind of stop right there. But the thing that she continued to talk on, and then she told me she'd been to a class, and she said, I went to a class here in Huntsville, and I was at the library, and somebody was teaching it, and they were really nice. And I went to sit down with them, and, I'm just being fully honest, Cris, with you. Like, they're really nice. And I talked with them, and I let her finish up, and she was talking some more. And I just looked at her and I said, well, did they ask you about, the widow's benefit? And she's like, no. And I said, why not? And she said, I don't know. I said, that's because I feel like financial advisors in general, and again, I'm not trying to negative talk. I'm teaching here. There's more to a family than just the accounts that they have.
Yeah.
And that's the way that I teach my staff. We discuss this stuff on Teams meetings, my advisory staff meetings with my advisors. We talk about things to look out for how to be empathetic, to not just focus on accounts. Because when you're sitting down with a family, you have to remember that there's more to them than just their IRA or their 401k.
Yeah.
There are other things that are really important to them. Their kids are really important to them.
Mm-hmm.
Spend time on the kids. Ask lots of questions about the kids. If they've been married, divorced, ask more questions and tell them, this is what I tell my staff, tell them why you're asking the questions.
Yeah.
So that they don't feel like, man, this guy's really nosy. What the heck's he want to know all this information? The reason I need to know all this information is there are things that you don't know that I know because I've been trained in this area. So I need to probe a little deeper. And so I'll let the person I'm talking to know why I'm asking some additional questions. I said, I want to make sure that we're exhausting all of our options here. And so if it's okay, I'm going to ask you a few more questions. So that's how we do it at our office. We understand when a family walks in the door, they've likely been listening to our show for a while. They've been to one of our events. They've seen us on TV. But at the end of the day, we want them to know that when they come in, they are worth more to us than just our money. And we truly want to make sure that when we sit down and look at their entire, when I say entire, I mean the entire situation, that we're looking and trying to uncover every little thing that we possibly can, even if it dabbles a little bit in the estate planning area. We're not estate attorneys. I'm not going to give you legal advice. But when you've been doing this for 20 plus years at this point, you got the gray hair I've got and the certifications that I have and the experience that I have, I've seen some things happen. So it sometimes will allow me to ask a few additional questions to make sure that you're set up with the right professional in the other areas if need be. So I just thought that was a great story.
Yeah, it is.
They had been to speak with someone already before me. I didn't know it. And I was able to uncover something that for her is probably going to be a game changer. It's probably going to be a game changer. And the reason I say that is his social is likely to be substantially higher than what hers is. So in that case, you're talking about, a pretty good swing in income for this particular person. Whether she works with me or not long term, I can go to bed at night and say, hey, I sat down with somebody and I helped them uncover something that they just didn't know about just because they came in to see me. And you should have seen her face when I was talking to her about this. So again, just real story, this kind of stuff happens. So when, there are people out there today, again, listening to the show right this second, they're like, I'm good. And you know what? This lady may have thought the same thing until she said, you know what? I think I want to talk to a financial planner. So she started trying to find us again. But there are people out there that are listening, thinking they're good, and they might be good. And as I like to say, what if we could make you gooder? What if you come in the office and you might be good, but what if you can be gooder? So anyway,
even though that's not a proper word.
No, it's not, but I love to use stuff like that.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah. I love that. So here's the number, because maybe you have a question similar to that and you want to get some help from somebody who is a retirement planner. 256-937-2010. Go in for what Cris calls a discovery session. You can text the word visit to that number, but go in and get some personalized advice. And remember, you can always head to wgfinancialgroup.com for even more information. And you can listen to our past shows that you can do on Spotify. You just put in the name of our show, which is, the Rocket City Retirement Show, and listen to past shows. Cris talking about that very story, there, he talked about how to save and how to get some other Social Security benefits. So listen to some of our past shows just by searching them on Spotify and Apple. And thank you so much for joining us. This is the Rocket City Retirement Show. I'm Lou Ann Fulmer here with Cris Wallace. So, Cris, anything else you want to share before all?
Yeah, I was just laughing. People are like, he might be good at financial planning, but his grammar is terrible.
No, but I love how you say that. You use it purposely.
Yeah, it's on purpose for sure.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, well, let's go to what I wanted to kind of get to today. And so I want you to talk about or describe the financial vortex that can eat up more of our money than we'd probably like.
Yeah. So first of all, you have like your own debt, and you can get into this debt spiral. I don't mind talking about this kind of stuff because I was in that debt spiral, years ago, and I've always said I could use a credit card, better than anybody out there. And so, I could go into, I won't go into it on the air, but there's stories and stories I could tell you about that. So that debt, can kind of create like this debt spiral. College savings can really, really can get you as well. So this is an area that I see a lot of families, I don't want to say mess up, but they overextend themselves in helping their children so much with college that it's to their own detriment. It hurts their retirement at the end. So I've seen families that have come into the office and they've done so much for the kids, and in some cases still paying the student loans, that they're not putting enough away for their own retirement. And I get it, because listen, I'm a parent of 3, but I also gave my kids these are the rules. This is what you're going to do. 2 years at community college. You can go anywhere else in state. I'll pay for it. And I'm only paying for 4 years, and that's it. And so there's like lines that I've drawn. But if I would have not been able to afford that, then they would have been on their own. Because one of the things I did tell my kids, and they're totally fine with this. My boys are now almost 22 years old.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe it.
I know, it's crazy. I know my daughter will be graduating. She's 18 and a half this year.
Goodness,
so, but they would have been totally fine if they had to take some student loans, but they know they don't want mom and dad to not be able to retire, because I have a mom that doesn't do as well in retirement because she didn't have the assets. So, they want to make sure that mom and dad are putting away their money. But I've seen that problem, where the parents have overextended themselves helping out with, kids' colleges. And then also caregiving. In a recent survey that I was actually looking at, 39% of respondents had to leave the workforce to care for a loved one. And spoiler alert, it's usually the wife that does that.
Usually the female, Yeah,
because usually a female is going to take care of mom or dad. Right. So in a husband-wife situation, usually the wife will leave the workforce, and then that does a whole bunch of things that limits Social Security contributions, that limits retirement plan contributions. You maybe you had to leave at 45 the workforce, and maybe you want to try to get back in at 55. It don't work that as easily that way when you're 55. So again, that's kind of like this financial vortex that really can just wreck a family.
Cris, why is it important to have a spending plan in place during our peak earning years? So
even during those peak earning years, right, you're making a lot of money. And I think the tendency can be, it's like, I'm making so much money, I don't have to budget. I have all the money coming in that I need. I can buy whatever I want to, whenever I want to. You end up, you start spending, you make more, so you start spending more. So it's really important. Like in my situation, I do not budget to the T like some of the people that I work with. But what I do is I make sure that I'm hitting my savings targets. And I say, okay, all right, am I maxing my 401k? Yes. Am I maxing my HSA? Yes. Am I putting some in after-tax investment? Yes. Am I doing all of those things right that I know, say 20 years down the road, where if I want to retire, I can? Those are priority number one. Then if there's excess, then I know that I can have some of that balance, as I like to call it. So not so hardcore saving and eating beans out of a can, but making sure that I'm saving, hitting my targets, and then we can still do like vacations with the family, because I am a strong believer in balance. I don't want to die the richest person in the graveyard so I can leave my kids a bunch of money. I want to hit my savings targets so that my wife and I can retire, have a successful retirement. But then I also want to be able to go out to eat with my kids or go on vacation and be able to pay for things as well. So there is a balance. So as you're in your peak earning years, it is important as you make money to make sure, if you don't do a budget, make sure you're hitting all of your savings targets that will enable you to retire and still kind of live that same lifestyle when you get into retirement, because nobody wants to go into retirement and actually drop down in lifestyle. That's not fun. That's not retirement. So anyway, Luann, this has been a great show. I've enjoyed it. It's just you and I. We didn't have Graham or Richard.
We missed them though. But...
Yeah, I feel special. I didn't miss them. I see them every day.
You see them every day. That was a special time we had.
Yeah, so I loved it. It's like old times. So anyway, let's give our number out, 256-937-2010. Again, the number's 256-937-2010. I hope everybody has an awesome and blessed week. And remember to serve every person in every situation.
Please remember that converting an employer plan account to a Roth IRA is a taxable event. Increased taxable income from the Roth IRA conversion may have several consequences. Be sure to consult with a qualified tax advisor before making any decisions regarding your IRA.
Investment advisory products and services made available through AE Wealth Management, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Insurance products are offered through the insurance business WG Insurance Services. WG Financial Group is an investment advisory practice that offers products and services through AE Wealth Management, LLC, a registered investment advisor. AEWM does not offer insurance products. Insurance products offered by WG Insurance Services are not subject to investment advisor requirements. AEWM and WG Insurance Services are not affiliated companies. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims-paying abilities of the issuing carrier. This radio show is intended for informational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should it be construed as advice designed to meet the particular needs of an individual's situation. WG Financial Group is not permitted to offer, and no statement made during this show shall constitute tax or legal advice. Our firm is not affiliated with or endorsed by the U.S. government or any governmental agency. The information and opinions contained herein provided by third parties have been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed by WG Financial Group. This radio show is a paid placement.